Well, car hijackings countrywide are on the rise. In Gauteng, there's been over 2,700 incidents from April to June. Ryno Schutte, who's a security expert, has some tips on how to avoid criminals and get home safely. Ryno, thank you so much for your time this evening. I was reading somewhere about how criminals are taking advantage of the lower levels of lockdown and that they've got some catching up to do where business is concerned. Sometimes we actually negate the fact that actually, for many criminals, this is just business.
I've been saying it for years, that they're good at what they do as good as we are. So if you're in the financial industry, then you're good at what you do. Criminals are exactly the same. So every time something new comes up, they know how to get around it. But just getting back to the concerns, if we go look through the statistics, the quarterly statistics for 2019-2020, there's actually a huge increase from 2019 and 2020 during lockdown. So in 2019, we had about 625 just in Gauteng. And during lockdown, 425. And now currently these statistics released, we are 934. So it's actually a huge jump from during lockdown, after lockdown, and COVID obviously had a huge impact on that as well.
Yeah. You're talking here about how they are able to, or they're trying to catch up to the business that they've missed out on during these lockdown. But as matters stand right now, where would you say are the most vulnerable areas? Where are those hotspots that we need to know about as the public?
It's usually around when you're close to home. It's not always as random as everybody thinks, unless there was an armed robbery of some sort. But the hijackers usually scout a few days before what kind of vehicle they need. And it's usually on a Tuesday, Thursday, and a Friday that the hijackings occur, because they had the whole week to obviously see your movements. And it's at your driveway. So when you approach your driveway, lower your sound on your radio, put your phone down, be vigilant. If you don't feel safe, rather drive past. And before you drive into your driveway, park parallel, let the gate open, and then only enter while you're busy scouting. And even if you don't feel safe, at least drive to the nearest police station or get your armed reaction company to escort you if that needs be. If it's after hours, female specifically need to be vigilant at this given stage, because they deem them as vulnerable.
Yeah, and let's speak a little bit about how females are becoming more and more the target. As a woman, what are we doing right or what are we doing wrong? And where are the blind spots, in your opinion?
I don't think it's doing right or wrong. It's more about, it's an easy target. Females drive alone with their children specifically sometimes, and they scout them well in advance, so they know what the ins and outs are. And sometimes the divorce and where we stand in the country, that's also an impact, because they know the lady is alone and there won't be anybody waiting for her at home. And females are more independent these days, so they do see them as soft targets. But mostly when the WhatsApp comes through or Facebook comes through, or we sit at a robot and we're putting on lipstick, that's always an issue, because they look for that, and that you're a soft target. So try to just be a little bit more vigilant, slow down when you approach a stop street, a robot. Don't be on your phone. That's the first thing they look at. And if they're not going to get your car, they will grab your phone. So either way, you will be a smash and grab statistic if you're not vigilant.
Yeah, and when it comes to even hijackings, it's also been a say that do everything you possibly can to avoid being in the back seat of that hijacked vehicle, that you could potentially be the person that is taken along for the ride. How do you avoid that, especially if you've got a few people with guns on you? And obviously at that time, there's a shift in power dynamics, isn't there? So how do you avoid getting to the back seat of the car and going on what we would call a ride-along?
It's a fight or flight mechanism. So you need to create time and space. Give them what they need. Give them what they want. Your life is not worth it. So if they want your car, let them take it. If they want your handbag, the cell phone, whatever, just give it to them and try to move away. But don't turn away and run away, because they might just take that as a flight risk of some sort, and they'll shoot you in the back. But try to move away as quickly as possible. If you have a child in the back behind you, put your leg in to when you unbuckle your child. So in the event they drive off, that you can grab your child and you can move away from the vehicle as quickly as possible. And then just a few tips on if you're in a situation, don't resist and keep your hands visible at all times. If you're going to go for your safety belt, your seat belt, show them that you are doing it and keep your hands in the air at any given stage. And then be submissive and listen to the suspect's instructions. Don't try to be a hero. Don't try to fight them off. It's not worth your life. And if you have a child, let them sit behind you specifically. So when you get out of the car, you can quickly move around and get your child out, but indicate to them that you have a child in the back behind you. And once again, remain calm, but try to notice on the languages they speak. Count the number of voices. Listen to the information the suspects are sharing amongst themselves. Are they trying to get away quickly? Can you identify shoes, markings, tattoos? So there's quite a lot to take in at that given stage, but just try to remain calm and don't fight back.
All right, so you're saying that as much as you're remaining calm, don't fight back, look after the child and be mindful of the child that may be traveling with you. It's to observe as much as possible, clothing, what they doing at the time, what they're saying at the time, and all of this will help in hopefully catching a perpetrator?
Definitely. Well, at least we've got technology that's rolling out within South Africa, which is license plate recognition. So if you can get information out as quickly as possible, borrow somebody's cell phone, get it out to your local security company and the police force, get that information circulated, at least it gives those that are reacting on your behalf some kind of information on what to look for. Are they armed? Is it a knife? Try to basic information. You don't have to remember everything, but every little bit helps.
Yeah. You know, also, Ryno, where there is demand, there is supply. That's everything in life. It works on the principle of demand and supply. Clearly, there is a demand for the vehicles from South Africa. But I guess the question is, where is this demand coming from that is continuously causing an endless supply and innocent people getting hijacked?
There's a huge market for second-hand vehicles in South Africa, and by the time most of the vehicles that they hijack, if it's a higher range vehicle, they would have already had the registration documentation of an old scraped car. They will have the VIN numbers, they'll have the license disc, and by the time they take your vehicle, they just slam that on and they're good to go. It's a huge organized crime syndicate that's running. Because you cannot get that vehicle registered without somebody in the inside. So we're not saying that everybody is crooks, but how do they get those papers if a vehicle has been scrapped? So by the time they get your vehicle, new plates, registered legally, and all they need to do is go change the VIN numbers on the chassis, and they get away.
Ryno Schutte, we'll leave it there for this evening. Thank you so much for your time. Security expert there talking to us about how can one, avoid hijacking, but most importantly, if you do get hijacked, how do you ensure that you escape with your life intact?